Ford has been hit with a $2.5 billion judgment in a lawsuit down in Georgia for defective roofs in the Ford F-250, the SuperDuty. On its surface, this seems like a pretty cut and dry case until you get to a couple of facts that really are not being widely talked about in the press and the articles about this. Now, this jury verdict came down, about 10 days ago as I'm recording this, and it kind of caught my eye because Ford is now on the receiving end of the two largest judgments in Georgia history, and both of them are around defective roofs on the 250. And so the facts behind this case is Herman and Deborah Mills, ages 71 and 64 respectively, were driving down the road, ran off the road, had an accident, crushed the roof, and both of them unfortunately died. Deborah was driving. She died at the scene. It took something like 30 minutes, 26 minutes to cut Herman out, and he later died at the hospital. Absolutely a tragedy. I'm not going to take anything away from that. But their three sons, the family, sued Ford for a defective product. What they argue is this, that for 26 years, Ford knew that the F-250 had a unbelievably weak roof, and they didn't do anything about it. Now, they strengthened the roof in either 2016 or 2017, but they have internal documents that show Ford knew about it and had designed a stronger roof back in like 2008, but they refused to start installing it and instead lobbied the NHTSA to not write stricter standards for roof crushing on heavy-duty trucks. I feel like we've all heard this story from auto manufacturers before. Well, the case was actually in two different phases. The first was compensatory damages to the family, which turned out to be about $30.5 million. But then there was a second one, which was the punitive damages of $2.5 billion. Now, this happened in Georgia. It's been filed in Georgia, but it's a federal case, a U.S. District Court down in Middle Georgia. And that all seems fair. If you have a rollover, you should expect the roof to not crush you to death. But there's a couple of things here that aren't getting a lot of airplay. The damages were based on the fact that Ford was found to be 85% responsible, with Deborah, the driver, being 15% responsible. So let's take a step back, and what we know of this accident is Deborah was driving and had a heart attack, ran off the road, hit a culvert, launched the truck 81 feet, whereupon it rolled. That cannot be Ford's fault. Regardless of whether they could have built a stronger roof but didn't, if they meet federal standards for that roof crushing for a SuperDuty truck, it's a completely different argument as to whether those standards should be tougher or not. But if a company meets the standards, they should not be held liable. Maybe, well, not to bring politics into it, but maybe if we did that, our regulations would have a little bit more common sense to them. So it's an absolute tragedy, but I believe it's going to be thrown out because, very interestingly, a few days before this verdict, there had been another case regarding a F-250. Another couple had been driving their F-250, I think it was a 2014 model, and they had a tire blowout. They rolled, and it killed them. They won as well, or the family did, and it was a $1.7 billion judgment against Ford, but it was almost immediately thrown out within days because they said the judge did not give Ford the opportunity or enough opportunity to show that they were not liable for the accident. Do I think this $2.5 billion punitive damages are going to stand? Absolutely not. I don't. And that seems like a ridiculous amount. But what's frustrating to me is that I've read multiple articles about this, and I actually stumbled into this about 4 or 5 days ago. But the articles that keep popping up for me in auto blogs and on news sites almost never mention those other factors. If I'm driving a truck and I just roll, I would expect to not be crushed to death under the roof. Of course, trucks are supposed to stay tire side down. But it's a completely different issue if I'm going fast enough that I hit a culvert and fly 1/3 the length of a football field before crushing the roof. It'll be interesting for me to see what happens here. It's just very frustrating, once again, that it appears auto manufacturers are saying, we could have made it better, but we just didn't, and then choose to fight it in court. I'll let you know if I hear any updates on this one. Thanks for being here.